Originally, I wasn't going to do any kind of review or first impressions on this movie because I don't know, I just didn't really want to, but then I kind of saw how mixed of a reception this film was getting, so I've decided, hey, I might as well give my opinions on it. Um, so, um, First of all, I'll start off with my knowledge of the character and Sleeping Beauty. Sleeping Beauty itself is probably one of the Disney classics I'm least familiar with. I, I'm not even sure if I've seen it all the way through. So obviously that hindered, that will, if you're hoping for me to compare it in how it's different to Sleeping Beauty, I'm not useful for that. However, I am familiar with the character of Maleficent from stuff like Phantasmic at Disney and kind of the Disney mythos in general. So when I heard they were doing a live action Maleficent was the good guy all along film, I really wasn't keen on it unless she was literally just the villain. So I was hesitant, to say the least, going in. However, I was pleasantly surprised by this movie. It's a mess, is the nicest way of putting it. But the film's so dark and it's surprisingly, yeah, dark is the word I'd use to describe it. I really enjoyed it. So I'll start with the positives like I did before. Um, I'm not going to get into spoilers really with this. There'll be some minor spoilers, but this isn't going to be like my X-Men or Godzilla review in terms of spoiler content. So starting with the positives. Uh, First of all, Angelina Jolie as Maleficent is probably the best part of this film, especially when she's evil Maleficent. She kind of just destroys everyone else acting around her, and she seems to be one of the only two actors, in my opinion, that realizes how dark this film is meant to get. The second of which is Sharlto Copley as the king, who I think was also great in the film as the king. And yeah, he's probably once again one of the darker characters of this. Also, the film really, I kind of just appreciated it on the level of how daring it was. I mean, um, this film basically says all other adaptations of Sleeping Beauty are lies and just kind of anti Maleficent propaganda as such. And yeah, basically says everyone in the original film that was a good guy was either unimportant, useless, not useless, kind of stupid or evil, really. Which was, yeah, I just kind of appreciated it on that level, to say the least. All the action in this and the cinematography itself is really good, in my opinion. The film looks visually beautiful, and yeah, it's all very well shot, which is nice. And also, yeah, as I said earlier, it's really dark, to say the least. The subtext surprised me with how far they went and still managed to get a PG. Because, minor spoilers here for the start, Maleficent is framed at the start of the film as the protector of this place called the Moors, which is basically the magic lands. and the humans are always trying to invade, and she's basically the protector of the land. However, as a young child, she met a human boy, and yes, it didn't end well. And yeah, the subtext when Charlotte Copley returns, seduces her, and drugs her, and then slices off her wings is pretty dark if you think about it. I mean, at the least serious, it can be framed as like a very serious, horrible act of domestic abuse. And yeah, it could be framed as something a lot worse than that. And it came across to me as Jolie and Charlotte Copley were some of the only actors who realised just how dark that was meant to be. And I mean, you could argue that that subtext isn't there, but in the scene where she reacts to having her wings sliced off, doesn't really leave a whole lot to interpretation. Um, Now, I said earlier the film's messy, so I think I will get into some of the negatives. The tone is all over the place. I mean, you've got that really dark stuff in there in the first act, and it kind of comes back in the third act. But in the middle, first of all, the second third is just kind of dull and was what I expected. Well, she was the good guy all along, but yeah, it just didn't feel right. It felt like they had that script for a Maleficent film where she's framed as a good guy, and some genius ran in, muddled it all up, and was tried to throw in his own, or her, I don't know, spin on it of how dark it, of this darker version. And it feels like Disney kind of realised what was being made and tried to pull back, and that also really shows in the third act, which, whilst is great in my opinion, um, I don't know, it just feels like her revenge was set up so well in the first third of the movie that that it felt weird that you didn't really get to see it. It felt like Disney were pulling back, like, oh, we can't get too dark with this, which is a shame because I was prepared to see Maleficent go in there and just murder everyone. Um, and also, the prince in the film doesn't really do much for the story or anything. And you could argue whoever's playing Aurora doesn't really have a lot of personality, but number one, Sleeping Beauty, to my knowledge, didn't really in the original, and I feel this is kind of commenting on that as such. So yeah, I can see why people haven't enjoyed this greatly, but I personally think it's kind of brilliant in its own insane way. And I was really, yeah, pleasantly surprised by this movie. So if I was to rate it out of 10, 5 being average, I would say it's a 7 and 8 in some places. But yeah, would I recommend it? Yes, I would say you should at least see if you like it, because the first act is so good, especially when Jolie plays evil Maleficent, like the just completely evil one. And my favourite scene is basically the recreation of the scene from Sleeping Beauty. That, in my opinion, was the best scene, and yeah, I think overall there's enough here to like at the very least. I can't see anyone hating this film, but yeah, so yeah, would I recommend it? Yes, definitely. You should go and see it at least once. See if you like it. Tell me if you thought it got too dark or whatever. I'm not sure why. Well, no, actually, I can't see why the reception is so mixed, because people were, for some reason, expecting really good things from this. And that's partly what went into me liking it, in that I wasn't really expecting anything great. So seeing something this good surprised me. So yeah, thanks for watching this other review I've done. I'll do this for more movies. The next one will probably be Edge of Tomorrow if I see that. So, yeah.